Joining us now with more, Mark Fuhrman, former LAPD homicide detective and Fox News contributor, and Endell Brown, a defense and civil rights attorney. Great to see you both. Endell, let me start with you on what you see here, because already many people are saying that this was an execution.
You know, Megan, that video is extremely difficult to watch as a man loses his life, a wife loses a husband, and his 5 children lose a father. What I see is officers approaching him and him with his hands up, seeming to wonder what is he being, approached for. Then I see him being tackled to the ground and officers pinning down his left arm, and 2 officers are on top of him. What is difficult to see from the videos that I've seen, I saw both the earlier video and the one that came out later today, is his right hand. I see one of the officers taking control of it for a certain point in time, but then I lose track of it when I see that video. One of the officers says, you know, I swear to, if you don't stop, if you move, and then the next thing you hear is some type of scream that you can't make out and gunshots being fired. In the second video, it's very clear that you can see that Alton does not seem to have any type of weapon in his hand, but you see him being shot in the chest numerous times, and once again, it's very difficult to watch.
But Mark, you know, we all have the luxury of sort of this armchair analysis and aren't there in the moment when someone says this guy has a gun, and reportedly did have a gun on his person in his pocket, at least according to the initial reports. Your take?
Well, Megan, when you look at this, we should talk about what we do know. The officers didn't see this suspect in suspicious behavior and then approach him. They were directed there by a radio call. A citizen was threatened with a weapon. So they go there, and when you watch the escalation of force, first they verbalized, and he failed to comply with the verbal commands. They used a taser, and that either didn't deploy correctly or didn't hit him correctly, but it was ineffective. Then they actually de-escalated the force that they could have used by tackling and trying to grapple with the suspect. Now, this man has to take responsibility that he did have a gun, and he conducted himself in some manner to draw attention to a citizen who called the police. And after that, the one officer, if this is the way it went down, one officer shot, one officer didn't, when you hear he's got a gun, if the other officer now uses deadly force, it's because he believes that that gun is in the hand or is attempting to be put in the hand of the suspect.
All right, that's racist-ass Mark Fuhrman. For those of you who don't recognize that name, he was the racist-ass cop that tried to frame O.J. Simpson back in Los Angeles in the killing of Nicole Simpson Brown. So his credibility is shot. This asshole tried to plant evidence against O.J. Simpson. All right, let's clean this up. Number one, they approached this guy and basically told him to get on the ground. He apparently questioned him as to why are they coming up on him. At that point, they attempted to tase him, and the tasing didn't work. Now, why would they tase somebody that has no weapon in his hand? No weapon in his hand, okay? He is not a visible threat at the point that they approached him. They escalated the entire situation by first attempting to tase him and then bum rushing him and throwing him to the ground. So for Mr. Fuhrman to say that he didn't conform or obey their commands, you know, okay, fine, that's one thing, all right? So give him the benefit of the doubt on that one. But they were the ones that escalated the situation, not de-escalated. So then they throw this man to the ground. One officer, the officer that's on the left, has control of his left arm and has his hand on his head. The second officer that's on the right is straddling this man. Mark Fuhrman doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, because the officer that says he's got a gun is the same officer that shot him. The man was not in contact with the gun that he apparently had. The gun was in his pocket. He didn't touch the gun. If you see the later videos, you could see that the officers, one of the officers later on went in and took the gun out of his pocket. So he did not have the gun in his hand when they shot him. But that's Mark Fuhrman.
And Al?
I mean, I'm not going to say that, you know, I'm not going to cast aspersions on somebody who's not here to defend themselves and say what they, you know, what they thought was happening. When an officer approaches you, I think it's just kind of normal to want to know, why exactly am I being told to get on the ground? Why exactly am I being approached in this aggressive manner? And I think many people in the community are on edge because they see these numerous situations, and it seems to be a very quick escalation without an opportunity for people to figure out what's going on. And he's the CD guy, right? He's out there every day. The owner of the store knows him. They know he's not a bad guy. They know he's not a dangerous guy.
But the cops
Why don't
don't
the people
know.
who are policing
But
his
the thing is,
community
the cops
know who
don't
he
know
is,
any of
and
that.
he's there?
That's the
And that's
disadvantage
part of the problem. We need people
I'm
in
up
our
against a hard
communities
break,
that know
guys.
the communities they're
Apologies.
policing.
I gotta go. Reverend Jesse Jackson is...
See, and that's the problem with Fox. Fox never lets people actually get in everything that they want to say. So Fox is always one-sided on this. Now, I'm going to attempt to pull up the video from CNN so that you could at least get some kind of a viewpoint on how these various channels are portraying these situations. Here is the CNN take on the killing of Alton, the resident down in Louisiana.
Now to talk more about the shooting death of Alton Sterling is criminal defence attorney Paige Pate. Thank you so much for coming in and talking with us. The videos that we've seen are disturbing. We have two police officers on top of Mr. Sterling, and he is shot at point-blank range. What is your reading of what played out?
I mean, we haven't talked to all of the witnesses yet, but having watched both of these videos, I think it is a clear case of excessive force. I've represented police officers in cases like this where they've used force against an individual that they were trying to arrest or trying to apprehend, and the key legal question is, does that individual, Mr. Sterling in this case, present an immediate threat to the officer or some other individual in the area? If there is no immediate threat, if that person doesn't have a gun out and is about to shoot, then you cannot use deadly force. And so I think what we've seen from this video is excessive force, because they shot him and they killed him when he was completely immobile.
Now, the Justice Department is now handling this. How do you think they will proceed going forward?
Well, the Justice Department will come in as an independent agency to look at this. There's a U.S. Attorney's Office there in Baton Rouge, but I do expect the investigation will be run out of Main Justice in Washington, D.C. The FBI will investigate it. They'll, of course, look at the same video that we've looked at, but they will also talk to the witnesses. They'll, of course, talk to the officers if the officers want to cooperate. They don't have to, because if it's a criminal investigation, then they have a Fifth Amendment privilege not to talk to law enforcement. So we don't know at this point if the officers are actually going to make a statement about what happened.
And as you say, you've dealt with cases like this. How should the police have dealt with this particular situation?
Well, the first thing that you want to do when you arrive on the scene, when there's been a complaint of an individual with a firearm threatening people, is you want to assess whether or not that person is an immediate danger to anyone. Do you see a firearm? Is he making moves or gestures in a violent or tumultuous manner towards someone? But from what we saw in the video, when they approached this individual initially, he didn't have a gun that was brandished, you couldn't see any type of weapon, and he wasn't moving towards anyone. He appeared to be in a position posing no harm to anyone. So once he's contained and you know there's no harm, then you can approach him, question him if necessary, and if you believe he's committing a crime, if you find a gun on him and it turns out he's a convicted felon, then you can arrest him. But there's no reason for deadly force if he's not posing an immediate threat to you.
We see this same situation play out a number of times across the United States. What is the problem here? Is there a problem with the training of police in these sorts of situations? Do people panic? Do the police just not know how to handle some of these situations?
I think it's a little bit of both, and then I also think there's, I hate to say it, but an undercurrent of racism in some law enforcement agencies across the United States. I mean, I've seen that personally in my practice, and I don't think you can have any other conclusion after watching this video other than these officers did not treat this man as they should have. Now, was that based on their own prejudices or their fear, their panic? Maybe they were poorly trained, but they've all been in law enforcement for several years. Both of these officers who were directly involved in the use of force, they're not new cops. They've been on the force for a period of time. You would expect them to be better trained.
Paige, thanks so much for talking with us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. So he basically is calling it what it is, but there's another video that's out there that I'm going to do shortly, and it's done by a police officer, and you really are going to have to see this. All right, this is in contrast to the Fox gets slant on this particular tragedy.
Joining me now for more on all of this, Louisiana Congressman Cedric Richmond and Val Demings, who served as the police chief of Orlando, also running for Congress. Val, when we look at this kind of situation, we have a slice of video. We do not have all the videos. We do not know all the before and after. I want to ask you a fair question, which is based on the video we do have. Do you see anything wrong?
Well, first of all, let me just say that it is definitely a tragedy that has occurred in Baton Rouge. My heart goes out to the family and everybody who was there that had to witness it, everybody that will be affected by it. We know that all of the facts are not in. We need to see all of the video from every different angle. We also need to interview all of the witnesses and certainly track down the initial caller that I think can provide some very crucial information. But looking at that very narrow piece of video, I do not personally see anything, any actions that the suspect made that would dictate the use of deadly force.
You're saying the way the suspect was pinned to the ground, and we can probably show part of that again on our screen here so people see it again, that the way the suspect appears to be pinned or restrained on the video that is available, that doesn't pose the kind of threat that would justify the officer's use of deadly force?
Well, as I said, I spent 27 years at the Orlando Police Department. I've worked the streets. I've worked in just about every different division, rose up through the ranks to become the chief, worked in internal affairs and investigated shootings. They're very, very stressful. There's a lot of pieces of information, physical evidence, and statements that need to be taken. But when I look at the video without all of the information, and it's still early, but without all of the information, when I look at the video that has been provided, I don't see anything from viewing that that the suspect did that would justify the use of deadly force.
Congressman Richmond, what about you?
Well, I was concerned when I saw the video last night, but looking at the video that was released today only doubles my concern, and my troubles are increased. I mean, it's very problematic to see that video and realize that someone lost their life in that manner. And I agree with Val that looking at that short clip of just a moment in time, the use of deadly force seems very unreasonable there, and only confirms that you need an outside independent law enforcement body to investigate this shooting.
Congressman, you were telling some of the hardball staff before the show that getting the federal investigators involved can sometimes take weeks or months. How fast was this compared to precedent, and what was different this time?
The only thing I can tell you is that I am a sum of my life experiences, and after Katrina with the Danziger Bridge and the Henry Glover case, it took years for justice to come in on Danziger Bridge. The New Orleans Police Department investigated it, closed the investigation, ruled it self-defense because the decedents had fired on the police. Well, the FBI comes in a couple years later, they do a year-long or so investigation and find out that the decedents weren't armed at all, never fired on the police officers, and wind up charging them, convicting them, and now they ultimately pled guilty after the appellate court got involved. So for Justice Department to be involved this early is unique, but in this case I think it was very warranted because we really had to give the community a sense that this will be done by the rules, by the book. It will be thorough. We're not going to sweep anything under the rugs, and we're going to make sure that we answer all of the questions that are raised by this video, and that we're going to let the facts take us wherever they lead us.
All right, Congressman Richmond and Val Demings, thanks to both of you. Appreciate it.
See, now that's the difference between the coverage that Fox News gave this tragedy and MSNBC gave this tragedy. I will say this, that CNN, from the moment that they picked this story up, have been on this story pretty much every hour, whereas Fox basically, after that clip that you saw at the beginning of this video, hadn't done jack on this thing, even up until 10 o'clock this morning. They had done one or two 2-minute or 3-minute clips regarding this particular murder, but that was basically it. Last night I took a look at the Bill O'Reilly show, and there was not even a mention of anything regarding this. Also, the Sean Hannity show, not a mention. 60 Minutes, not one mention. Now, I will give Megyn Kelly credit because she did have a segment on this, which you obviously will see because it will be at the beginning of this video. But other than that, Fox has basically ignored this. And Fox wonders why black people believe that their particular channel, network, is pretty much racist in everything that they say and everything that they do.